Ethan did not remember the exact moment he lost consciousness, for the abruptness of the station's destruction left a hole in his recollection. He knew only that he had been serving as a junior technician on Outpost Aloria, an isolated research station orbiting a remote planet, when the alarms blared that fateful day. Fire, sparks, shuddering metal. The chaos swept him off his feet, and the next thing he knew, his eyes fluttered open to the dim glow of a flickering light embedded in rough-hewn walls. His heart pounded as he took in the surroundings, uncertain if he was in some subterranean bunker or perhaps a fragment of the station that had survived re-entry. His vision was blurred, and the air felt thick, tinged with a metallic tang that caught at the back of his throat. Slowly, he tried to move. The first attempt to sit upright left him gasping and clutching his ribcage, where a fierce pain throbbed with every breath. A shriek, half human and half electronic, echoed in his ears, making him groan with disorientation. He blinked, pressing the heel of his hand against his temple. Was he still alive, or was this a cruel limbo between life and death? Gradually, as his eyes adjusted to the dimness, he realized he was on a makeshift cot fashioned from some synthetic material, likely salvaged from wreckage. Around him lay arrays of small machines and tools that looked partially alien in design, reminiscent of the advanced technology used by the research station scientists, yet different enough to spark a pang of apprehension. A swirl of emotions coursed through him: confusion, fear, a vague relief at being conscious, and then dread as he recalled the station's catastrophic end. He tried to stand, but a sharp spike of pain radiated up his spine. Falling back against the cot, Ethan let out a soft moan that reverberated off the bunker's walls. It was then, through the gloom, that he spotted a silhouette. The figure stood in the doorway, arms crossed, its posture fluid yet alert. With a deep intake of breath, Ethan forced himself to focus on the outline. Its shape suggested something humanoid, yet there was a grace and slenderness that spoke of an otherworldly heritage. "Be calm," a low, melodic voice said, echoing through the small enclosure. "I can help." The figure stepped forward, and the pale light revealed a woman, though clearly not human by Earth standards. Her skin bore a subtle bluish cast, hair a cascade of shimmering white. Her eyes glowed gently in the half-dark, reflecting the bunker's faint lights like pools of liquid silver. She wore a simple robe-like garment, belted at the waist with braided cords. With gentle reverence, she approached the cot and placed a palm across Ethan's forehead. He shivered at her touch. It felt unnaturally cool, yet soothing. For a long moment, they locked gazes. His mind wrestled with a swirl of questions. Where was he? Who was she? Why had she saved him? Yet all words eluded him, lost in the bewilderment that overcame him. Before he could speak, the woman leaned in, placing her other hand lightly against his ribcage. Her eyes fluttered shut, and a subtle tingle spread through his body, a soft current that was neither painful nor exactly comforting, but clearly effective in calming his surging pain. In a voice barely above a whisper, she offered him her name. "I am Lyra," she said, the syllables rolling off her tongue in a manner both musical and peculiar. "Our station is gone, but I have found you among the wreckage and carried you here. You must rest." Ethan swallowed, managing to mouth the word Ethan, though he was not sure if he spoke it clearly. Her look of compassion suggested she understood. Then she nodded once, withdrawing her hands, and motioned for him to stay still. Gratefulness, fear, and wonder flooded his mind, competing with the throbbing pain in his ribs, but he sensed she was not a threat. He let himself sink back onto the cot, lulled into a deep sleep by exhaustion and the gentle hum of whatever energy emanated from her. When Ethan next awoke, the bunker's lights had stabilized somewhat, illuminating a compact space carved out of basaltic stone. A faint mechanical humming rose from beneath the floor, and he guessed there must be a power generator hidden away somewhere. Lyra sat near a slender table across the room, tinkering with a small device that glowed with shifting colors. Though her back was turned, Ethan noticed that her posture was tinged with tension, as if she sensed he was awake but hesitated to address him. He cleared his throat softly, striving to put her at ease, but the dryness in his mouth forced him into a coughing fit. She spun around, silver eyes showing concern, and rushed to offer him a vessel of water. As he sipped the lukewarm liquid, he noted that it tasted faintly mineral, likely drawn from some underground reservoir or carefully purified from the environment. The dryness eased, and Ethan breathed a slow sigh of relief. "How long have I?" he began, but his voice cracked, and he found it difficult to formulate a complete question. "You saved my life. Where are we?" "In an ancient shelter," Lyra answered, her voice soft, yet echoing with a curious resonance. "The station's debris rained down upon this planet's surface. I searched the wreckage, found you unconscious, pinned under twisted metal. I carried you here." The memory of the explosion flashed through Ethan's mind like lightning. He remembered the alarms, the flares of shuddering red lights, the frantic radio transmissions that dissolved into static, and the horrifying jolt when the station shattered around him. A wave of nausea threatened to overtake him, but he forced himself to remain composed. That was you out there," he said. "Thank you for saving me. But who are you? I mean, you're not from Earth, right?" Lyra's features tightened, suggesting the question conjured a burden of sorrow or perhaps longing. "No, I am not," she murmured. "My people call themselves the Adelants. We once had diplomatic ties with your Federation, but those ties were fragile. I served aboard Outpost Aloria to study potential energy manipulations for the Council. I had my own lab station, separate from the main decks where you humans resided. I guess you and I were the only ones to survive, if we can call this surviving." Her words startled him. He knew the station had employed a handful of aliens, but he had seldom interacted with them. He had glimpsed an alien female or two in the corridors. Other humans had whispered rumors about them, but never had he been so close as to speak, let alone share an emergency with one. Something about her manner unsettled him, for her melodic voice carried traces of sadness. He had no recollection of seeing her face, but evidently, her presence on the station had saved his life. That alone was enough to stir a profound gratitude in him. He slowly tried to sit upright, ignoring the dull ache in his ribs. A question weighed heavily on his mind. "We're stuck here, aren't we?" he asked softly, scanning the Spartan surroundings, the battered devices, the dull hum of a generator that might run out at any moment. "How do we get out? Is there any chance of rescue from the Federation, or from your people?" A cautious glimmer came into Lyra's eyes, and she looked away. "That is what I am trying to determine," she said. "First, you must regain your strength. We can speak of escape and rescue after we know more." She forced a small, reassuring smile, but he sensed her uncertainty. His instincts told him this planet, though presumably habitable, might be remote and uncharted, or dangerous in ways they had yet to discover. Nevertheless, Ethan felt a flicker of hope. He had survived the catastrophe thanks to Lyra, and perhaps together, they could devise a plan. Over the next few days, though Ethan was never sure precisely how to track time in the bunker, he struggled to regain his mobility. Lyra applied a curious mixture of alien salves and subtle energy manipulations to help mend his injuries. Her hands glowed faintly whenever she infused him with what she described as harmonic pulses, an Adelan method of assisting the healing process. At first, Ethan found it mildly disconcerting, though it eased his pain remarkably well. In those same days, he learned more about the bunker. Apparently, it was not newly built. Instead, it was part of some ancient installation, abandoned centuries earlier by an unknown race. Lyra had stumbled upon references to its coordinates in old archives, and in the aftermath of the station's explosion, she sought shelter there. The dormant equipment included a partial power source that still functioned, drawing on geothermal energy from the planet's crust. The lighting, the air circulation, even a rudimentary water filtration system, all were relics of an advanced civilization that had once thrived here. But supplies were limited, and the environment outside was harsh. The planet's topography featured rocky plains, mountainous ridges that shimmered with mineral deposits, and a scorching sun that rose and fell in a cycle of uncertain length. The bunker extended into a warren of corridors, some caved in, others locked behind doors that refused to open. In rummaging through these corridors, Lyra uncovered fragments of technology that baffled even her advanced understanding. She sometimes spent hours tinkering with them, muttering in frustration at the complexity or heartbreakingly incomplete nature of these alien relics. Ethan, whose background in engineering was modest compared to the station's top scientists, offered what help he could, providing small suggestions as he slowly recovered. He found himself increasingly fascinated by the synergy between Lyra's gentle energy manipulations and the old equipment's faint, dormant power nodes. More than once, he witnessed her place a glowing hand upon a console, causing it to flicker with renewed vigor, as though her presence stimulated a reaction that was otherwise dormant. "How do you do that?" he asked one day, watching in awe as she revived a tattered scanning device that had refused to respond to any of his attempts at reactivation. "I am not entirely sure," Lyra admitted, sounding a hint of embarrassment. "We Adelans have an innate affinity for certain energies, but this place, it resonates in ways I cannot fully explain. It's almost as if the technology is waiting for me, or for someone with a similar frequency, to connect with it." Ethan shook his head, marveling. "Our scientists would have given anything to see this," he said. I've never witnessed such direct synergy between an organic being and mechanical systems. There's something about you, your entire species, like living keys to ancient locks." She smiled at that, but it was a bittersweet expression. Living keys, yes. I do not know if that is a gift or a curse. Still, if it can help us find a way off this planet, I will make use of whatever strange bond this technology and I share. Feeling a sense of shared purpose, Ethan began to explore deeper into the corridors with Lyra. Their flashlights cast dancing beams against the dusty walls, revealing cryptic symbols etched into the stone. Over time, they pieced together fragments of the inscriptions, some in a language akin to old Adelan dialects, some in forms Ethan did not recognize at all. They had no universal translator that could easily decode these glyphs, so it fell on Lyra's partial knowledge and instinctual connections to glean the meaning. It was during one of these explorations that they stumbled upon a door that looked more imposing than the others. It was framed in dark metal with swirling patterns that seemed to shift under the faint glow of Lyra's energy. They spent hours trying to pry it open. Eventually, guided by a combination of Ethan's mechanical know-how and Lyra's uncanny energy infusion, the door ground open with a thunderous groan, revealing a hidden chamber. Inside, they found a circular room lined with crystalline panels that pulsed faintly at their approach. In the center stood what appeared to be a tall archway, adorned with intricate symbols. The structure glimmered, as though partially active, and a breeze of cool air drifted from within, stirring the dust-laden atmosphere. Ethan felt the hairs on his neck stand up. The archway resembled no technology he had ever encountered. Something about it hinted at an interplanetary gate, or at least a transportation device that defied conventional logic. Lyra, eyes wide, cautiously approached the arch and placed her palm against one of its crystalline segments. A sudden pulse of light coursed through the entire structure, weaving around it in a kaleidoscopic pattern. Both Ethan and Lyra staggered backward, blinking at the radiant display. Before their very eyes, a swirl of energy coalesced in the arch's center, taking on a liquid-like texture, transparent, yet shifting in color. "What is this?" Ethan breathed, hands trembling with adrenaline. "A portal." Lyra's face was pale, etched with both fascination and alarm. "It might be," she whispered. "I've heard ancient tales of Adelan ancestors who discovered technology that could bridge worlds, but such technology has been lost for countless generations. We must be cautious." A long silence followed as they stared, enthralled by the shimmering vortex. The device's activation had cost them no apparent supply of energy from the bunker's systems, implying it either possessed its own, self-sustaining source or drew from the planet's deeper reserves. Ethan exchanged a glance with Lyra, heart pounding, uncertain whether to feel exhilaration or dread. They both suspected this was more than they had bargained for when they sought refuge in the bunker. In the weeks that followed, Ethan recovered enough strength to walk unaided. He and Lyra established a routine, scavenged the outside terrain for nutrients and additional supplies during the planet's cooler periods, then retreat to the underground passages to study the archway. The environment above ground was harsh. Swirling dust storms swept across the plains, and the rising sun's heat was brutal. Yet they had discovered some pockets of vegetation near the edges of a shallow canyon, as well as small water sources trickling from subterranean springs. The air was breathable, though rife with gritty particulates that scoured their exposed skin if they ventured out too long. Ethan became increasingly conscious of how reliant he was upon Lyra's gifts. More than once, Her energy manipulation saved them from a threatening situation, a collapsed passageway, a damaged circuit, or even a strange predator that lurked outside the bunker's entrance. On that particular occasion, they had gone to survey more of the crashed station's debris. Amid twisted beams and shattered panels, a reptilian creature with razor-sharp pincers charged at them. Lyra, reacting instinctively, emitted a bright pulse from her hands, momentarily stunning the creature, allowing them to retreat to safety. Ethan would never forget that flash of light nor the haunting screech of the attacker as it scuttled away in confusion. "You might be the most extraordinary being I have ever met," he confessed to Lyra late one evening, as they sat around a small table in the bunker, sharing a meager meal of reconstituted rations. "I only wish your people understood the extent of what you can do." She tilted her head, her silvery gaze reflective. "They do understand in theory," she said softly. "But on my homeworld, such abilities are seldom spoken of in detail. The Council trains only a few of us to harness them. Many Adelans see them as a vestige of our ancestral line, a power that should remain hidden lest it draw unwanted attention from other species." Ethan considered that for a moment. "You mean the Federation might exploit it?" She nodded. "Or fear it. Throughout history, differences in ability or technology have led to oppression. Your Federation leaders might see my powers and demand that I serve them, or at the very least, they might study me like a laboratory specimen. I do not crave conflict, nor do I wish to be dissected under the guise of science. So we remain careful." He couldn't deny the logic in her words, for humankind's history was riddled with the exploitation of anything deemed advantageous. As the quiet settled around them, Ethan felt a warmth blossom in his chest, a deep admiration for the woman who had rescued him. They were bound by necessity, yet their bond was growing into something deeper. Still, the portal in the hidden chamber loomed in the back of his mind. He yearned for answers. Where did it lead? And, perhaps more importantly, how could it help them escape? Lyra shared that curiosity, and nightly they returned to the hidden chamber, examining the archway's inscriptions. Through trial and error, and guided by that strange synergy Lyra possessed, they learned that the portal required two living beings to power it simultaneously. One was not enough to keep the swirling energy stable. A single occupant could cause the vortex to destabilize, flickering erratically. Yet when both Ethan and Lyra placed their hands on the crystalline panels, the arch responded with a harmonious glow. One evening, after numerous attempts, they succeeded in sustaining the vortex for several minutes, its shimmering surface inviting them to step through. Yet neither dared cross that threshold without more knowledge. They had no idea if it would lead them to safety or cast them adrift in the vacuum of space. And the inscriptions were too fragmented to read with confidence. Yet the lure of the unknown tugged powerfully, offering a faint beacon of hope amidst their isolation. Time passed in a slow, steady rhythm, punctuated only by storms on the surface and the cautious exploration of the bunker. Ethan found himself confiding in Lyra, sharing stories of his youth on Earth, the ambitions that had led him to volunteer for remote station work, and even the heartbreaks that had shaped him. In turn, Lyra described her homeworld, with its crystalline forests and pale turquoise skies, the sprawling cities built in harmony with nature, and the cultural intricacies that made open displays of her powers taboo. Through these exchanges, a powerful connection formed, born from trust and mutual reliance. One particularly tense day arrived when the bunker's geothermal power supply began to wane. An old fault in the system triggered an emergency shutdown, leaving Ethan and Lyra scurrying to rewire components. The lights flickered ominously as darkness crept along the corridors, and the hum of the machinery dropped to a disquieting silence. It was only through Lyra's frantic efforts, supplemented by Ethan's manual bypass of the control interface, that power was restored. Exhausted but relieved, they slumped against a wall, exchanging weary smiles. It was then, in that intimate hush, that their unspoken feelings for each other found quiet validation. She slipped a hand in his, and they pressed their foreheads together, breathing in unison. Ethan felt an emotion rise that transcended gratitude, forging a sense of belonging he had never truly felt before. The laws of logic insisted they were from two different worlds, physically and culturally incompatible. Yet here, in a secluded bunker beneath an alien sky, Their hearts aligned in a moment of undeniable clarity. In the following days, that closeness deepened. Lyra taught Ethan rudimentary forms of her healing energy, guiding him through careful breathing techniques and visualizations. He could never replicate her skill, but he became increasingly receptive to the faint pulses of life energy that swirled around them. Their synergy was no longer merely technological. It resonated on a personal level, a harmony of souls. Some nights, they stayed awake in the hidden chamber, quietly experimenting with the portal, analyzing inscriptions, gleaning tidbits of knowledge about the ancient civilization that once thrived here. Eventually, they uncovered a crucial piece of information etched along the arch's base. After painstakingly deciphering old Adelan characters, Lyra concluded that the portal linked a network of gates spread across distant systems, a relic of a civilization known only as the Illyrian domain. These long-lost people had harnessed cosmic energies to connect multiple worlds. Over centuries, the gateways had fallen into disrepair, abandoned or forgotten, leaving only fragments of their once grand design. Yet the archway's partial functionality hinted that some nodes in the network still hummed with life. If used correctly, it might deposit travelers onto a sister world, possibly one with the means for them to find rescue. Such knowledge rekindled hope in Ethan, yet fear nagged at them both. There was no guarantee the portal led anywhere safe. The inscriptions warned that improper alignment or insufficient energy could scatter travelers into oblivion. Moreover, the device required a potent bond of energies, presumably the synergy between an Adelan and a human, a coupling that had never, to their knowledge, been tested before. With each passing day, conditions on the planet worsened. Temperatures fluctuated wildly, and the supply of rations dwindled. Their attempts at cultivating the small patches of vegetation near the canyon yielded meager results, enough to keep them alive but not to provide comfort. Dust storms grew more frequent, and cracks began appearing in the bunker's outer corridors, as if the very planet was urging them to leave. Driven by necessity, they decided to attempt crossing through the portal. The first two experiments were short-lived. The gateway flickered, coughed up sparks of energy, and then collapsed in on itself, hurling Ethan and Lyra backward against the walls. If not for her quick reflex in generating a protective shield, they both might have been badly burned. Yet the partial successes guided them to refine their approach. One midnight, though midnight was a concept measured only by Lyra's improvised chronometer, they returned to the chamber. The plan was to fully synchronize their energies before opening the portal, hoping that a stable link would form. Lyra wore an improvised harness of wires connected to a console that Ethan had rigged, intending to gauge the energy transfer. Ethan had reconfigured several of the bunker's power cells to feed into the archway at the moment of activation, hoping to lend additional stability. Both felt a heightened pulse in their chests. Standing before the arch, Lyra placed one hand against Ethan's shoulder and the other on a crystal panel. Ethan laid his own hand over hers, feeling the subtle hum of her energy flow into him, then out into the arch's structure. The inscriptions along the base began to glow in lines of faint blue light. A swirling field appeared within the arch, shimmering and rippling like water. "Focus," Lyra urged, her voice trembling with effort. "We must stay attuned to each other." Heart pounding, Ethan fixed his mind on the connection they shared. Her voice, her touch, the steady resonance of her presence. He felt a surge of warmth spread from his fingertips, coursing into the crystals. In response, the portal brightened, illuminating the chamber with radiant, dancing patterns. The swirling field began to solidify, coalescing into a stable, mirror-like surface. Lyra bit her lip, her posture tense as she concentrated. Then, in an abrupt flash, the swirling settled. The arch hummed, radiant yet steady. A breeze of impossibly cool air drifted from within, and beyond the shimmering surface, they glimpsed a hazy landscape bathed in gentle purplish light. A horizon speckled with distant stars shimmered beyond. Ethan's heart soared with cautious elation. "We did it," he whispered. "It's stable." Lyra nodded, exhaling shakily. "At least for now. We should not delay." Arm in arm, they approached the portal. The mirror-like surface rippled at their closeness, inviting them to step forward. A swirl of doubt flickered in Ethan's mind. Would they arrive safely on a world where help awaited, Or were they venturing headlong into a place of unimaginable peril? But the alternative was certain demise on this harsh planet. He tightened his grip on Lyra's hand. "Together," she whispered. He nodded. With a shared breath, they stepped through. The sensation of crossing was impossible to describe. A rush of wind without direction, a kaleidoscope of colors, a tingling that coursed through every molecule of their being. For an instant, Ethan could not tell if his eyes were open or shut, if he still held Lyra's hand, or if his limbs even obeyed him. Then, abruptly, his feet touched solid ground. He inhaled deeply, looking around in astonishment. They stood on a broad, flat expanse of what seemed like smooth, polished stone. Above them arched a twilight sky, streaked with delicate hues of lavender and pale gold. Dozens of glittering stars shone overhead, forming unfamiliar constellations. Clusters of luminescent plants dotted the landscape, their glow bathing the surroundings in a soft, welcoming light. Ethan felt a rush of relief at the breathable air, crisp and refreshing. He turned to find Lyra kneeling, her hand pressed to the ground, her body trembling from the exertion of crossing the portal. He dropped to her side, placing a supportive arm around her shoulders. "Are you all right?" he asked, concern etched into his voice. She looked up, silver eyes alight with wonder and exhaustion. "Yes," she managed, though her breathing was labored. "It's so beautiful." Slowly, they helped each other to their feet. The gateway behind them, an identical archway to the one in the bunker, stood silently, the swirling vortex gone. Strangely, it did not vanish entirely. Instead, it dimmed to a faint haze, as though resting. Ethan surmised it might reactivate under similar conditions, but for now, it was dormant. They gazed at their surroundings, uncertain of what to expect. In the distance, they spotted faint shapes that might have been buildings or rock formations. A gentle breeze stirred the luminescent flora, causing it to shimmer and wave. Even in his fatigued state, Ethan felt hope burgeon in his chest. This place was not the scorching, dust-ridden planet they had escaped. It breathed life, offered possibilities. "This could be a place where we find rescue," he whispered, mind racing with cautious optimism. "Another link in the old network. Maybe it's inhabited or near some known star routes." Lyra nodded. I sense an energy," she murmured. "It's different from the bunkers. Stronger, more vibrant." They pressed onward, each step guided by the glow of the strange flora. The gentle hush of the breeze enveloped them, and soon they saw definitive shapes in the distance, slender towers, half-ruined structures, and arching bridges that hinted at a once great city. Approaching with caution, they found that the ground was covered in mosaic patterns of glassy tiles, worn smooth by time. A few steps farther, and they stumbled upon a discovery that drew tears to Lyra's eyes, an Adelan script etched into a broken column, partially overgrown by glowing vines. This is an outpost," she breathed. "An ancient Adelan settlement, or one that had ties to my people. Look at these symbols. They match the old genealogical lines. Could it be the mythical second cradle our elders speak of?" Ethan knelt beside her, brushing dust away from the inscription. Though he could not read the language, he recognized certain patterns from the bunker's glyphs. The realization that they had landed on a world tied to Adelan history struck him as both remarkable and daunting. They wandered among the ruins, searching for signs of life. Occasionally, they heard the distant cry of an alien bird, or glimpsed a small creature scuttling among the glowing vines. But no immediate threats emerged. At last, near the center of the crumbling structures, they discovered a partially intact building with walls covered in intricate carvings. The entrance bore an emblem similar to the one they had seen in the bunker's archives, leading Lyra to suspect it was once a temple or a gathering hall of some significance. Inside, the air was cool, the floor strewn with fallen stones and decaying ornamental hangings. They paused, inhaling the quiet stillness. Then, as they advanced deeper, faint lights flickered along the walls, triggered, perhaps, by Lyra's presence. Ethan marveled anew at the synergy that seemed to bind her to this place. There was no sign of immediate danger, only the hush of a domain lost to centuries of neglect. In a secluded chamber, they found something extraordinary, a repository of spherical devices resting in niches carved into the walls. Many were cracked or dark, but a few still glowed with a soft inner radiance. Lyra approached one, laying her fingertips against its surface. Instantly, it hummed to life, projecting a holographic pattern that swirled in the air above them. Ethan watched in astonishment as ghostly images formed, representations of star systems, lines that traced connections among them. He realized with a start that this might be a map of the portal network. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of arcs connected nodes scattered across the galaxy. Some glowed brightly. Others flickered or were dark, presumably lost or deactivated. He felt an excited shiver run down his spine. This is bigger than we ever imagined, he breathed. These gates, the Illurians built them, or the Adolans did, or maybe both working together. It's a cosmic web that was once thriving. Lyra nodded, her gaze fixed on the hologram. We might find a path home through this network, she whispered, tears of relief gathering in the corners of her eyes. Or even contact with the Federation, if your people are connected somewhere. Despite the remnants of exhaustion, joy sparked between them. They were not alone in some random corner of the universe. They had stumbled upon one of the ancient hearts of a once great civilization. Here, in these ruins, they held a chance of forging a path to freedom, or at least sending a signal to the outside galaxy. And in that moment, the bond they shared, this extraordinary synergy that bridged human and Adolan life, felt like destiny. Days passed, and Ethan and Lyra meticulously studied the glowing map within the repository. One of the devices projected a sequence of glyphs that corresponded to the gate's alignment frequencies. Using the knowledge gleaned from the bunkers, they attempted to decipher these frequencies, hoping to locate a stable path to known space. Their biggest challenge lay in sustaining the energy required to power another jump, especially if it was over a great distance. Moreover, they had to consider the possibility that the next gate might open on a region that was actively patrolled or inhabited. Nevertheless, their diligence paid off. Piecing together fragments from the ancient star charts, they identified a corridor that might lead toward Adolan territory or possibly even near Federation outposts. The complexity of the runic instructions made them uncertain about the exact destination. Yet, with limited supplies, waiting forever was not an option. They prepared for another crossing. In the intervening days, something profound grew between them. The quiet tenderness they had cultivated in the bunker blossomed under the luminous vegetation of this new world. Occasionally, they would take brief breaks from their frenetic studies, wandering hand in hand along the winding mosaic pathways, sharing unspoken awe at the strange fauna flitting among the ruins. They discovered small orchard-like groves of glowing fruit that tasted both sweet and slightly bitter, providing nourishment far more palatable than their ration packs. At dusk, they watched ribbons of pale auroras dance across the horizon, reflected in each other's eyes. One evening, as they sat atop a broken column overlooking the ancient city, Ethan found himself gently tracing the lines of Lyra's hand, marveling at how her delicate fingers belied the power she wielded. The hush of the evening air enveloped them, and in that hush, he finally voiced what had lain unspoken in his heart. "Lyra," he said, "I don't know what the future holds, or if we'll manage to get back to either of our peoples. But I know that I want to be with you, wherever we go. I can't imagine my life without you." She turned to him, her silver eyes shimmering in the twilight. For a moment, she said nothing, letting his words linger in the air. Then she leaned in, her forehead pressed to his. "Ethan," she whispered, "I feel the same. Our bond, it transcends boundaries I once thought impassable. Whatever path we choose, let's walk it together." Emotion overwhelmed him. He closed his eyes, letting her presence wash over him, thinking how unlikely it was that a human and an Adolan would find love in the aftermath of disaster. Yet here they were, forging a new destiny. At last, they stood before another ancient archway, discovered among the ruins near the city center. Though partially collapsed, it was connected to a more intact console that still brimmed with energy when Lyra approached. They had set their coordinates based on the star map's cryptic instructions, hoping it would lead them to a place where they could request aid or at least discover more allies. Side by side, they touched the console, their combined energy flaring through the ancient machinery. Slowly, the swirling field formed. Unlike the first portal, this one glowed with a more vivid luminescence, as though the city's hidden power reserves were far greater than those in the bunker. Still, the process was draining for Lyra, and Ethan steadied her with an arm around her waist. When the portal stabilized, they shared a determined glance. No words were necessary. Hand in hand, they stepped into the unknown. A new cascade of lights assaulted Ethan's senses. He felt his body contort in ways beyond normal perception, buffeted by an intense energy flow. Then, in a jarring flash, they were through. The scene that greeted them was bustling with movement and light. Immediately, they were surrounded by metallic structures adorned with the Federation's emblem and a variety of alien scripts. Uniformed personnel, human, Adolan, and others, hurried across a wide atrium, stepping around various crates and scanning devices. Overhead, massive steel beams curved into an arching dome. It took Ethan a stunned moment to realize they were inside a busy starport, reminiscent of the Federation transit hubs he had visited once long ago. A startled official approached, eyes wide, gesturing for guards to stand down. Lyra clung to Ethan, dizzy from the crossing, as he tried to steady them both. The official spoke quickly, evidently astonished by their sudden appearance through an unknown gateway that had just manifested in the starport's perimeter. "Identify yourselves," the official demanded, though confusion and curiosity outweighed hostility in his voice. Who are you?" Ethan swallowed hard, tears of relief gathering in his eyes. He recognized the insignia on the official's uniform as that of a Federation frontier station. "I'm Ethan Shaw," he croaked, voice trembling with disbelief. "Formerly stationed on Outpost Eloria. This is Lyra, an Adelan researcher. We were stranded, but we found our way back." A flurry of exclamations followed. Technicians rushed forward with scanning equipment. Security personnel hovered, uncertain how to proceed. In the midst of the confusion, a warm sensation flitted through Ethan's chest. They had done it. They had navigated an ancient network to find civilization again. He held tight to Lyra's hand, not wanting to be separated. In the ensuing hours, their story unfolded in fragments to the stunned Federation authorities. Word spread quickly. 2 survivors of Outpost Eloria, presumed dead, had appeared via a lost piece of technology. Despite initial skepticism, medical tests confirmed Ethan's identity, and further scans verified Lyra's Adelan heritage. They were quarantined for a short period in a medical bay, ensuring they carried no harmful pathogens, but as the days passed, official suspicion shifted toward amazement. Scholars and senior officers clamored for details about the portal network, hungry for any knowledge that might offer strategic or technological advantages. Through all this, Ethan refused to leave Lyra's side. The doctors and scientists, curious about her abilities, requested demonstration after demonstration of her healing pulses. She obliged with caution, mindful of the cultural fears she had confessed to him. Fortunately, the Federation authorities recognized the political delicacy of the matter. They arranged for an Adelan diplomat, who arrived with a retinue of advisors, to speak directly with Lyra. The diplomat's astonishment was palpable, for it had been centuries since such synergy between an Adelan and advanced alien technology was last recorded. The Federation and Adelan delegations realized the existence of the ancient network had the power to reshape interstellar relations. And at the heart of this revelation stood a human engineer and an Adelan researcher bound by an inexplicable bond. In the weeks that followed, Ethan and Lyra found themselves the subject of high-level negotiations. A Federation Council convened to propose a joint exploration of the newly rediscovered portal network. Many recognized the enormous potential for trade, travel, and cultural exchange. Others, however, worried about the existential risks of unregulated gateways bridging countless distant worlds. For the most part, Adelan representatives seemed guarded yet intrigued, simultaneously wary of exploitation and eager to reclaim lost chapters of their own history. Amid these diplomatic maneuvers, Ethan and Lyra's personal story broke down barriers of prejudice. The councils were astonished by their close relationship, which defied traditional beliefs about interspecies connections. Some voiced concern, while others saw in them a symbol of unity. Skeptics receded when it became clear that the synergy between them, human and Adelan, was genuine. Their bond had been the key to unlocking the Illyrian gateways, and it might yet hold further secrets. Over time, an accord was reached. A carefully regulated expedition would be formed, jointly staffed by Adelan and Federation experts, to study and map the gateway network. Lyra, recognized for her unique affinity, and Ethan, with his practical engineering insights, were essential to this mission. Their first assignment would be to guide a small team back to the ruined city where they had found the star map, in hopes of reactivating the site's main repository and gleaning a deeper understanding of the ancient technology. Despite the weight of responsibility, Ethan felt buoyed by optimism. Not long ago, he had stood on the brink of death in a lonely bunker, uncertain if he would see another dawn. Now, the galaxy opened up before him, filled with promise. He and Lyra had not only survived, but their experience was actively reshaping the relationship between the Federation and the Adelans. More profoundly, they had discovered that love could transcend the boundaries of biology and culture. One quiet evening, after the day's negotiations, they found a moment alone in a private observation deck overlooking the starport. Beyond the transparent walls, a swirl of ships came and went, their lights twinkling against the cosmic blackness. Lyra rested her head on Ethan's shoulder, her mind still reeling from the countless changes in her life. He held her gently, mindful of the swirl of emotions inside her. Through the reflection on the glass, he could see her pale hair tumble around her shoulders and her silver eyes half closed in peaceful contemplation. "This is all so different," she murmured. "I spent so long hiding my gifts, fearful of being scrutinized, and now it is those very gifts that brought us home and helped unify our peoples." Ethan pressed a soft kiss to her temple. "You're extraordinary," he said, a smile tugging at his lips. "We might be stepping into uncharted territory, but we're doing it together." She turned to face him. "There will be challenges ahead," she whispered. "Even with the support of the councils, not everyone will welcome this alliance. We could face suspicion, jealousy, political complexities. Are you prepared for that?" He cupped her cheek. "I've faced worse odds in the bunker," he joked lightly, though his voice trembled with sincerity. "And none of that changes how I feel about you. If anything, it makes me want to protect what we have even more." Tears shimmered in her eyes, and she leaned in to kiss him. The moment was tender and filled with a warmth that transcended words. In that fleeting instant, the station's buzz of activity and the swirling stars beyond faded, leaving only the serene promise that they, against all odds, had carved a path toward hope. In the months and years that followed, Ethan and Lyra would go on to lead several expeditions through the renewed gateways, bridging worlds lost to time. Their discoveries sparked a cautious golden age of exploration. Where once there was doubt and fear, curiosity took hold. Human and Adelan ships traveling together to uncover relics of the Illyrian domain, forging friendships in places only whispered of in legend. Slowly, mutual respect and trust blossomed between the two civilizations. Their personal union became emblematic, encouraging open dialogue about interspecies cooperation and acceptance. While not everyone embraced the notion of a human and an Adelan forging a life bond, enough understood that their synergy had saved both their peoples from losing a priceless legacy. If love could power ancient portals and breathe new life into dormant technology, then perhaps it was the strongest force in the cosmos, weaving destiny across the void between stars. Ethan and Lyra often reflected on the moment they first awoke side by side in the bunker. The memory of that dim, flickering light, of shattered metal and dust, had given way to so much more: adventure, discovery, and a profound sense of purpose. In the quiet intervals between expeditions, they returned to Adelan's homeworld, walking beneath those crystalline forests, or sometimes visited Earth, strolling under its bright blue sky as Ethan introduced her to curious family members. Their love story, rooted in crisis and sustained by trust, created ripples that extended beyond them, touching hearts across multiple star systems. And so, amid the grand tapestry of interstellar politics and cosmic mysteries, Ethan Shaw and Lyra of the Adelans found their happy ending, not as an isolated note of survival, but as the harmonious chord of two souls whose bond transcended every barrier placed before them. Their lives became a testament to hope, echoing an ancient truth, that even in the darkest times, unity, compassion, and love can unlock gateways to whole new worlds, forging a future bright enough for any species to share.